And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello everyone, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Thursday, October 9th, 2025. And I have a lot to talk about because we have a series of powerful fall storms that are going to be impacting especially areas around the Bering Sea, including the Aleutians, Lower Alaska Peninsula, on up along the southwest, west coast, all the way up along the Chukchi Sea as well. And starting out on this Thursday, we do have a ridge of high pressure out here in through the Gulf, providing relatively tranquil weather to the Panhandle and areas along the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island. We have an area of low pressure, the original first storm to come through, now lifting north of Utqiagvik. So winds and surf coming down here along the Lisburne Peninsula on up to just east of Utqiagvik. We still have coastal flood warnings in effect till 4 a.m. Friday, but we're watching another low and front arcing into the central Aleutians with storm force winds this Thursday afternoon into at least early Thursday night. This front, as it comes northeastward, will tend to weaken, but it's what follows behind that. We have the remnants of a Typhoon Halong, which is going to come right across the central Aleutians around or shortly after noon on Saturday, and then further deepen as it tracks up here towards St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Island, then up into the lower Chukchi Sea by Monday. So this is going to be a very potent system. Late tonight into early on Friday morning, we have that low out there entering the southwest quadrant of the Bering with the front extending eastward into the central Aleutians. Out along the Panhandle, there are a few showers. This front here's kind of a lagging bit of a cold front trough there across the northwest, but that's going to wash out and weaken Friday. So we have the ridge of high pressure, kind of the quiet weather across the areas of the western Gulf, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, on up into the west coast. But this front, as it comes northeastward, will still bring some gusty winds and mainly some light rain up into areas of the YK deltas as we go into later Friday night. And by the time we get into Saturday, then that low is going to come up out of the North Pacific, which was once a typhoon. The remnants of that system will initially have higher end gale and some storm force winds, but as it heads northeastward towards St. Matthew Island right there, by Sunday morning early, it's going to have not only storm force but hurricane force wind gust with it, and that feature will continue drifting northeastward towards St. Lawrence Island. This is really going to put areas of the lower Yukon coast, Norton Sound, the southern western part of the Seward Peninsula, including the Bering Strait under the gun here for very late Saturday night, especially Sunday. And then as the low tracks into lower portion of the Chukchi Sea, it could even impact areas along the Lisburne Peninsula and on up along the northwest Chukchi Sea coast later Sunday and into Monday. So by Sunday afternoon, we have the low situated near or just west of St. Lawrence Island. This is going to bring in some very fierce winds and high surf that will likely result in significant coastal flooding along areas of the lower Yukon coast into Norton Sound and around Nome, and then on up toward the Bering Strait. So those of you here along the west coast, really pay attention to the upcoming forecast for this weekend, because there will likely be warnings issued for your location. As of now, high wind watches have been posted for Saturday night into Monday morning along the Seward Peninsula coastline, Norton Sound, lower portion of the, as we go down along the Yukon coast, as well as for St. Lawrence Island. Winds could gust as high as 80 miles an hour along this region here, as well as in through St. Lawrence. And I would say even maybe up into Nome, we could see some 70, 80 mile per hour gusts coming on in as that storm lifts northeastward through the Bering Strait. And that's going to cause very high surf and just cause the water to pull and pile up into Norton Sound. So again, heed any warnings or advisories that are issued. We do have a coastal flood watch that extends from just east of Utqiagvik all along the Chukchi Sea coast, including Kotzebue Sound, along the entire Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, lower Yukon coast, and likely probably even be extended a little further south, potentially into the western portion of Kuskokwim Bay. But this is the area that's really going to get hit hard, I think, as we go through later Saturday and into Sunday. So just some coastal storm preparedness and safety for everyone there. Secure outdoor property from high winds and water. Move vehicles, boats, and supplies to higher ground. Don't leave them near the coast area where the inundation of the water could get them, or in an area where there could be some flooding, either near a river mouth because of the backing up of the water. Have emergency power and heating available, along with an extra supply of food, medicine, and safe drinking water as a precaution. Avoid dangerous surf and flooded areas when the storm is underway, and know where to evacuate if conditions threaten. So listen to local authorities if you are going to have to evacuate. Stay informed through weather.gov/Alaska and local emergency alerts. So looking at the marine outlook here for Friday, mixed bag of winds, inner channels for the southeast, north winds 10 knots, Lynn Canal, 2-3 foot waves, southeast winds 10 knots, waves a foot or two around Petersburg, Stevens Passage, northwest winds 20 knots with waves maybe 3-4 feet as you get away from Ketchikan and Metlakatla, outer coast outside of Cross Sound down through Sitka and off of Craig, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots with swells 10 to 11 feet. And 20-knot northwest winds up there around Cape Suckling. Winds will be for the inner channel Saturday northwest 15 to 20 knots with waves 3 to maybe 4 feet. Outer coast winds tend to be a bit more offshore, except for off of Port Alexander, down here off of Prince of Wales Island, north-northwest winds 20 to 25 knots with waves of 10 to maybe 12, 13 feet. Offshore flow out of Yakutat, Cape Suckling at 10 knots, 4 to 6 foot waves. Winds will be northwesterly, Prince William Sound outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance at 25 knots, waves 4 feet within Prince William Sound, 5-6 feet outside of Hinchinbrook. And then going down the Cook Inlet, northwest to west winds 10 to 15 knots, upper Cook Inlet to Anchor Point. Strongest winds lower Cook Inlet out of Kamishak Bay. And there in Kennedy Entrance, west winds 25 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet. For Saturday, winds within Prince William Sound, easterly 10 knots, 20-knot east winds outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance to Kayak Island, and then northeast winds 15 knots, upper Middle Cook Inlet, but becoming east-southeast to 30 knots, lower Cook Inlet, and there at Kennedy Entrance with waves building 6-7 feet. Winds will be southwest to west, 15 knots around Kodiak Island on Friday. And as we go down along the length of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast winds will be increasing to 30 and 35 knots, especially False Pass to Cold Bay with building waves down that way. And then into Saturday, you're going to see winds further increase around Kodiak Island, south-southwest winds of 20 to 25 knots. And then as we go down along the Alaska Peninsula, south winds increasing 30 knots there off of Sandpoint, Chicknick, but picking up to 40-knot gales either side there at Cold Bay and False Pass. Waves could build to 20 feet there off of False Pass. Now the Aleutians, this is where the real action will be, because the center of the remnants of that typhoon, Halong, will be passing right up around Adak, Atka shortly after noon on Saturday. So Friday, ahead of it, southerly winds, generally gales 35 to 40 knots across much of the region. And then on Saturday, the center is located just north of Adak and Atka in the later afternoon there, 3-4 o'clock. We have 45 to 50 knot southerly winds across the eastern and central Aleutians. South-southwest winds 35 to 40 knots west of Adak. And along the southwest coast Friday, east winds 25 knots Bristol Bay, 35 knot gales here within Kuskokwim Bay, because we have that first initial front coming in. So there'll be some stronger winds through Etolan Strait, the west side of Kuskokwim Bay, Nunavik Island. As you get out towards St. Matthew, St. Paul, southeast to east 40 to 45 knot gale force winds, waves building to 20 feet up there around St. Matthew. Along the Norton Sound, lower Yukon coast, 25 to 30 knot winds out of Hooper Bay, Emonic, but east winds 15 knots up there at Norton Sound. And water levels are actually going to drop on Friday into early Saturday along the west coast. It's going to come down quite a bit, but don't worry, they're going to come back significantly as we go into later Saturday and Sunday. So for Saturday, we have 40 knot southeast winds within Kuskokwim Bay. Look what happens out here toward the Pribilofs and St. Matthew. Southeast storm force winds of 55 to 60 knots with potentially higher gust approaching hurricane force there as we especially go through Saturday evening into Saturday night. So this is really going to get things going out there. And the worst of the conditions coming later Saturday into Sunday. Now for areas through the Bering Strait on Friday, winds will be easterly 25 knots along the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And generally northwest winds 15 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea, northwest winds 20 knots from Point Lay up to Utqiagvik, and as high as 25 to 30 knot westerly winds Prudhoe Bay to Kaktovik for Friday with waves 6 to 9 feet. Saturday, the winds will still be westerly as high as 30 knots here around Kaktovik, falling off to 10 knots there at Utqiagvik. But as we come down along the Chukchi Sea, east winds will increase 25 to 30 knots, especially out of Kotzebue Sound with 5-6 foot waves. And then along the west side of the Seward Peninsula and that wider expanse of Norton Sound, look for southeast winds of 25 to 30 knots with even stronger, much stronger winds will be coming into this area on Sunday. So heed that and certainly pay attention to the latest forecast and possible warnings, because this is a storm to really respect and keep an eye on. So stay updated, informed, and be safe.